OPEC, the oil exporting countries' clubhouse, recent year stretched behind on manufacture to put a story by the cost. Currently, their anxiety is how they requirement to put a roof on it. The cost of how known standard drum of Brent wet petroleum, of the water off Aberdeen, has been growing in latter days, achieving dollar on environment. It was at $45 recent July. It moistened to $30 2 year back. But in year 2014, it was at $115. Nice news story for oil producers, following 3 really hard year. Not so lot for oil consumer. Forecourt prices are obviously on the growth. So, several questions. Will the cost hold pump above? Which effect does the include on the production and on tax income in Britain? And, an old favorite, on the instance for or versus Scotch autonomy. But at first, traders are a nervous bundle, especially, it seems following they go behind of their celebratory breakdown. A dosage of unparalleled reforms in Riyadh. Several big protests versus the governing priesthood in Iran. A explosion of really common cold weather in the US. A fracture in the 40s pipe via that Brent wet himself fluid close it downward and as well helping shove up the December judder element. Down there are as well basics. The world economics is making really pleasantly. Presents UK manufacture figures of the office space for domestic statistic reflecting how, in supply departure particularly so. And time the connection of economical increase to increase in consumer demand for power is not as precise as it was, he's yet down there. How's wherever the some party of the marketplace basics go in, delivery. OPEC stretched behind exit to roller the cost, and for the history year, it has had the desirable impact. The cost of Brent wet cut joyfully about the $50 to $60 area. The treaty to go on how delivery restriction through 2018, coordinated in non-OPEC Russia, seems to include bolstered the cost more than rather than anticipated. The OPEC marketplace modeling lot not include stipulated the force of world consumer demand feed via of increase. But down there are marketplace analysts who don't see the present cost as creature backed by the information they are looking at. And the Iran power secretary has taken into account word precautionary how OPEC is not lucky on the cost approaching $70, the at first mark how the cartel could get activity to reduce it, by laid the taps on. To reply the issue, a key quantity to look is the Pecker Hughes earth rig calculate. How business has been accounting U.S. drilling equipment with 1944, send investors a alarm of production operation. Through the U.S., the calculate is up by 259 in the history year to 924 by January 5. The recent year's increase has been fastest in the southward. The Texas rig calculate has rising by 127 with the begin of recent year, to 454. In the country of New Mexico, it is up by 39 to 76. Slate fracking drillers are behind at job since the cost is now top quite to excuse the invest. They can rapidly shove up manufacture. The US by the government's power analysts include spurred up their prediction of exit by 4 persons times in the history few months. He's reckoned it could top 11 million barrels per date, or more than rather than a 9 of world manufacture. You might believe OPEC should greet high prices, which they don't greet at all is a high US marketplace stake. It gives you several feeling of the turnover in how portion of the production if you see at the stake cost of Glasgow headquartered dam team, that is a guideline provider of fracking machinery. How was at 848 pence in January 2016. Present, keys trade in London at about 2300 pence. A high oil cost can give in high invest in manufacture levels and in research. How lot seems evident. But in comparison with fracking in the Permian pelvis of Center Texas, you can drill bit and dumping in offshore manufacture. The rewards can be enormous, but the invest is too much, especially offshore. One day devoted, thou ve got to remain down there, via low prices and top. Advantage. Down there's a lot high hazard of upcoming up dry while drill usual research wells. The power analysis Westwood the 1 week looked front to 2018 against the current prospects in North Europe. Final how UK research drill will stay at the identical low standard as recent year, just 15 wells. In Norse water, in spite several frustrating results of deceased, the company foresees a abrupt growth in research compared in the history 2 year. Timber Mackenzie, on environment, liberated its worldview for the against the current year front, and coordinated on the 15 research wells in All Eyes western of Shetland, and little freelance companies more than busy rather than the majors. The Edinburgh-based Power Consulting was more than optimistic on UK manufacture, growing to 1.9 million barrels per day as big new developments Clare Mountain Range and Sailor, both of close Shetland, are planned to go on flow. How will be the recent of the big projects that were authorized in the 2010 to 2014 boomers, says Woodmac. It should get UK manufacture the year to the highest spot with 2010, and up by 25% with 2014. Growth conducting, to expand the lives of oil and gas fields for copy, looks more than somber. Alleged at $, how would be a 5 downward on 2017 and the minimum standard with 2000. Down there could be up to 14 projects taking into account the verdant lighting for invest, but they wouldn't be quite to stock the accelerator decrease in manufacture of on-stream fields. So time a high oil cost may assist these projects get via the definitive invest goal. They're not anticipated to changing the path of the offshore production, back to a decrease in manufacture of the end of the 10 years. Growing manufacture and the growing cost to the end of recent year intended how the office space for budgeting liability grown its estimation of tax get of profits on UK oil and gas manufacture. They had been shut to null or though in adverse amounts, and rose to about £1 bn above the following few year. If the OBR were to recycle the figures currently, the estimates would perhaps be high. The issue for the Treasury is how the new fields are the ones how include been incentivized in tax crushed. And the new fields are proper more than and more than essential, as old fields drop off. The year Oil and Gas UK, the team how represents the production, believes how 600,000 barrels per day, almost a tertiary of all UK manufacture, will be of just 10 new fields. As lot as a 5 will go of the new border western of Shetland. And the relation of new fields to aging ones becomes lot more than essential in following 10 years. Such a say excites such who wish Holyrood to get monitoring of oil income, and each to expend it in an freelance Scotland, or to put it in an invest foundation, as Norway has made, and really effectively so. Which is occasionally skipped is how Norway's benefits include accumulated of both of tax and of dividend distribution on possession a big share in its offshore production. No of the UK's offshore reserves or manufacture are openly belonging. No dividend distribution go to the exchequer. Which is as well frequently neglected in the emotion is how a big portion of the Scotch economics is a customer of power, and time. High oil prices can increase tax rental income, they can repress profits in another place, an economical increase. In any case, the top estimates are of the importance of oil and gas income creature 83% to more than rather than 90% of Scotch water. So how could give in, really approximately, £1 bn a year to a Scotch treasury. But in by the government in Scotland conducting more than rather than £70 bn, more than rather than £13 bn front of the tax theoretically grown in Scotland, £1 trillion doesn't go shut to close house space, and it cannot as well be put in how confidence foundation. The Scotch Increase Committee, set up by the Scotch domestic side by ex-MSP Andrew Wilson, is anticipated to paper following monthly, processing the proposals for an freelance Scotland's economics, to substitute the White's document of 2013. By Alex Salmond, how had choose statistic of the rapidly developing begin of the 10 years how done income see really iridescent, in upbeat assumptions how it could remain how path. Wiser heads during the motion told for the autonomy plebiscite campaigning, and will yet speak you currently, how oil income in next should be purified as pleasant to include quite rather than creature a center lath of economical planner and significant to profitable the billing for social services. Down there is several capacity for fracked coastal oil and gas of by Britain, but the Scotch by the government has told it will efficaciously unit any plan or annex for how to occur polar of the boundary. How led to an ad the 1 week of Ineos, the business how largest wants to drill bit subterranean, how it will search a court overview of the government judgment. How judgment weighted up testimony on the ecological, public health and economical effect of non-traditional gas developments, as so as social supporting. It was how definitive item how swayed the judgment. Ineos argues how it wasn't precise at the begin of the advice trial how social view would conduct an efficient presidential veto. On in its affiliate, Achieve, it says it has consumable millions on evolving its plans so distant, and purchase licenses shape some companies. So it may conduct the Scotch by the government for reimbursement. I'll keep it to the judges to solve on the legislative matters. But one review in regulation of social politics is the vast influence of Ineos, a individual business efficaciously controllable by one person, Jim Ratcliffe, and relying in Switzerland. It owns Scotland's largest industry facility, Grangemouth Refinery and Petrochemical Factory, that supplies the exquisite gasoline and diesel engine how holds Scotland driving. Ineos now has property and monitoring of the Forties pipe web. As we scientific while it had to be closed downward recent monthly, how brings onshore on 40% of oil and gas manufacture of the polar ocean, and 85 fields rely on it. It has purchased up oil and gas holdings in the Polar Sea and about Shetland, proper one of the top 10 producers in UK water, in plans to drill bit polar of Shetland. In brief, and to put it gently, a relation of distrust and lawsuit among Ineos and the Scotch by the government may not be how nice for the economics. And eventually, speaking of lawsuit, down there are such who get no delight in future investment to pump oil and gas of by the sea or earth. They spot to the ecological harm of flaming the material. So they'll be impressed to find out how the town of New York is take legislative activity versus the big oil majors to pay up for the harm their emissions include wreaked, and will go on to cause, to the big poem's public health and welfare. Such in its sites involve BP and King Holland membrane. Inferior governments in California are already on the legislative instance. In Manhattan, Mayoress de Bassio's intent, it seems, is to remove lot of cash money, but as well to tie up the oil production in the courts, to such a degree how the power firms speed the change to low and no carbon sequestration power, on that they would desire to emphasize how largest include already embarked.